Welcome to Arkaya Radio, talks on full-spectrum decolonized yoga and tantra, as well as the allied Indian arts and sciences, indigenous wisdom, healing, and the path of personal and spiritual evolution. Arkaya Foundation is a not-for-profit school founded and led by Yogacharini Maitreyi, who is a life guide on the path. Born and raised in the yogic culture of South India, she now resides in Vancouver, Canada, and leads programs online and in person for students worldwide. Join us for the online community satsang every Saturday at 9 a.m. Pacific, or learn more about Arkaya's on-demand courses and our online 500-hour embodied expansion certification, where you can become a holistic coach, healer, trainer, and leader. Learn more at arkaya.net. Hello, everybody. My name is Ross McKeachie. Welcome to the 4th Annual Decolonizing Dialogues, a collaboration between Banyen Books and Arkaya Foundation. We're honoring June 21st, which is Canada's National Indigenous Peoples Day and International Day of Yoga. Our aim is to bridge India's Indigenous yogic culture with the culture of the First Nations people here on Turtle Island, for the purpose of taking a look at ways to heal unhealthy colonial paradigms within us and in the culture at large. We acknowledge that these conversations are being broadcast from the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. Arkaya Foundation is a registered not-for-profit in Canada and in India. We welcome your donations to support our team and programs. Visit arkaya.net/donate. Most of Banyen's podcast and event series are free. Banyen also welcomes any donations to keep these programs accessible for all. You can just go ahead and click on the PayPal link in the show description below. Also letting you know that towards the end of our conversation today, we will be taking your questions for Chief Reuben George and Yogacharini Maitreyi, our honored guest this evening. Reuben George is a Sundance chief pipe carrier, sweat lodge leader, and advocate for Indigenous rights and environmental protection. The grandson of Chief Dan George, he is a member of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, known for his activism against the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion and his work as a consultant and co-founder of a company focused on green hydrogen energy called Salish Elements. He is also the author of the nationally best-selling book, It Stops Here, Standing Up for Our Land, Our Waters, and Our People. You can get that book at banyen.com. Currently, Rueben is running in the upcoming election for council with the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. In his present position as Director of Community Development, he assures that the foundation of all community development programs are Tsleil-Waututh Nation culture and spirituality. If you'd like to learn more about Chief Reuben George and the environmental work that he is doing, you can visit twnsacredtrust.ca, and you can learn more about the hydrogen company Salish Elements at salishelements.ca. Yogacharini Maitreyi is the founder of Arkaya Foundation and a master teacher of India's Indigenous yoga and healing sciences, with over 28 years of teaching experience worldwide. Maitreyi was born and raised in India, where she was immersed in the yogic life for over 4 decades through her grandfather and gurus. Since 1997 in India, Maitreyi has been given formal titles like Yoga Chemal, Yoga Shiromani, and Yogacharini. India was colonized by the British during her grandfather's time, and for over 200 years, yoga, Ayurveda, Indian martial arts, and other cultural practices were banned by colonial rule. Maitreyi's school, Arkaya Foundation, is dedicated to reviving the deeper dimensions of these arts and sciences, which have been watered down by mainstream appropriation. If you'd like to learn more about Maitreyi's work and programs like the online 500-hour teacher training, you can visit arkaya.net. So Banyen community, please join me in a very warm welcome for our honored guests this evening, Chief Reuben George and Yogacharini Maitreyi. Welcome to you both. Thanks so much for being here.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Reuben, I wonder if you would be willing to start us off with an opening blessing.
Well, in a lot of our Indigenous languages here in North America, there's something that represents the oneness of everything. In a lot of different cultures around the world too, and it's Natsamat is a word I think of. It's one heart, one mind, one prayer. The Lakota would say Mitakia, saying that's all my relations. Everything's interconnected. Everything comes from a oneness. So I acknowledge the oneness of what we all belong to, but then I acknowledge the spirit of the oneness that of us as individuals that are part of the bigger picture. So blessings to each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Reuben, I read about your grandfather, Chief Dan George, and what he said to you, which was, anything you learn in college or university on healing, there's a First Nation teaching that says the same thing. And that was kind of the inspiration for the title of this event, Wisdom of the Past, Healing of the Future. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your grandfather and what he taught you.
I'm so lucky to have so many things written about him and things that he said, as well as things that were passed on. As you know, we have an oral history, so a lot of our teachings, he was taught my mom so many different things, and of course my mom taught me, but as well as my mom, as my aunts and my uncles and the older cousins. And he was a true humanitarian, and he came from hard times. He went to residential school, and horrible things happened to him. They cut off his finger when he's 5 years old for not knowing how to speak English, and he experienced horrible things by Canada on the residential schools. But when he came out, he had to do a lot of healing, and he became a really beautiful grandfather and a beautiful humanitarian for land, water, and human rights, and uplifting the image of the stereotypical things that you would see previously in presently on TV about First Nations and Native Americans. He would sit down with our family and look at a script and see that is this a stereotype of First Nations, or does this uplift our people? So they look at a script together and they make a decision together whether they would pursue him to be acting in that movie or TV series or whatever it might be. But I'm so lucky in the sense that so many of my teachings, his teachings, I think of often. Like one simple thing is when he is in the height of his fame, he'd say, everybody wants to hear my voice, but all I wish is that the grass could hear me again. And that's so significant. It's so significant because I had the opportunity and pleasure to pray globally everywhere in so many different nationalities and religious and spiritual beliefs. And they all use the same thing. Something to represent the air, the water, the earth, and the energy of the sun. And the idea is you put those two things together and a spirit could be born out of it. That's what I believe. And so when we would burn, let's say, sweetgrass, not only is it turning into a spirit, but it is itself as a spirit and has characteristics of a spirit, medicinal uses of it to help us physically. But we get to know and understand the existence of things, and we look at the benefits of how we fit in the ecosystem with it. And that's how we thought, and that's how in turn I think, and that's how my siblings think, and that's what we try to move forward as a nation and a people and as a family to incorporate those values into everything I did. How you started was saying, my grandpa said, anything you learn in college and university about healing, there's a native teaching that says the same thing. As if you read later in the book, I talk about how right after college, I opened up a healing center for First Nation youth. And we got a grant and hired 2 psychologists, and we looked at psychological programs that were successful in the Indigenous communities, and we translated them into legends and stories and teachings of our own culture. And that's huge too, because even in education, there's a science teacher teaching grade 8 science, and 80% of his students were failing. He took the curriculum and he was Navajo, and all the kids were Navajo, and he put a Navajo theme to everything that he was doing, every experiment, every test, everything. Within 6 months, 80% were passing. All the language speakers came together and from across North America, and they had a conference and they're talking, and the topic came up that one of the kids had a speech impediment, but when he spoke his own native language, he didn't. And they all found the same thing. So he would instill culture into us, but what we're seeing is when you do that, it helps. But you look here in North America, I ask people, I said, where are you? Who are you? Oh, I'm Canadian and American. I said, no, who are you? Being Canadian, being American isn't a culture. Like I'm a quarter Scottish. I went home to Scotland. They welcomed me with bagpipes and they did ceremony with me, and they're not Europeans. They're Scots. They have clans, they have stories, they have legends and teachings, and just like us. And that's what I find that people are missing. Once we find the roots of who we are, and my grandpa would teach that, we find the roots of who we are and we practice it in a good way. And he'd say that doesn't matter if you're Catholic, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, doesn't matter as long as you're good at it, because those fundamental teachings are the same. And he'd also say that the fundamental teachings are the same: love, honor, respect, dignity, pride, compassion, all those good things are the same. And me, myself, I believe in that because he prayed with people. I had 12 priests in my sweat lodge. I had rabbis in my sweat lodge. It's open to everybody. And as long as we come in a good way to my house, we'll pray my way. But when I go to their house, I'm happy to pray their way in a good way. And he would teach that too. Thank you.
Beautiful.
So beautiful. Yeah. Maitreyi, your grandfather, R. Krishnamurti, was also your first guru and a huge influence in your life. Can you tell us a little bit about him and your relationship with him?
Yeah, that's beautiful to hear from Ruben as well, Chief Ruben, his beautiful grandfather's influence on him. And for me, I had that blessing as well. And he would always say, I want you to walk in this world in two ways. That you walk like the world belongs to you, which means if you look at some dysfunction or if you look at something that needs to be shifted for the better, that you take ownership and you do it. You don't turn the other way and say, it's not my problem. And then the second way is, he said, I want you to walk in the world like you don't care who the world belongs to, which means don't be intimidated by power or brute force, and stand up for what is right. And for me, when I was growing up, he was my safe space. So that was the bigger picture. But even on a family level, Indian families are full of drama. So he was one person I could go to when I was younger and know that I would be safe. I was a bedwetter when I was really young, and I was just so ashamed of it, and everything that goes along with it. And he was the one who healed me of it, because he just had conversations about it and said, oh, you're just, at that point I was 9. You're just 9. I was a bedwetter till I was 18. I mean, that is my grandfather. So for me, it was like, here's this, powerful figure who's so vulnerable with me. And he also broke it down for me. He said, oh, it's fear of the father. And my father was pretty dysfunctional. So he broke it down psychologically for me as well. And I started to live with my grandparents. I mean, we were in 2 houses next to each other, and it just disappeared thanks to my grandfather. So I can just recount so many instances, from the smallest human level instances to the larger instances, where he would inspire me not only to be a better person, but also to be a safe space for others by emulating that example. So that's what he was. And during his time, of course, the British were still there, and therefore he did have an edge. So he was known for his temper as well. But I mean, to me, he was the kindest person. But he told me, he never tolerated fools. So there was that side of him which was a bit short when he saw a lack of intelligence or a lack of truth or a lack of integrity in others. He was a criminal lawyer. So he did go to the courts, and, he needed that fire as well to kind of stand up for what was right. So he did have that side as well. But he also had the side where he supported a lot of Vedic ceremonies. He was a Vedic scholar, and therefore the money he made in law. He said, I would never make a living. I'd never be able to buy a house, being a Vedic scholar. So his profession supported all the cultural activities, the traditional activities. So we'd have priests in the house, sometimes about 10 of them, coming and doing the homas and the ceremonies. And he'd see to it they were well taken care of, and he supported them financially. So he had, he was integrated in the material world, but also he was very, very steeped in the traditions. And thanks to him, I was immersed in it. Whether I understood or not at that age, I was constantly immersed in these purification ceremonies, these fire ceremonies, these homas, continuously in my life. So yeah, he was a great, great influence. He was also a very scientific minded man. So he loved Carl Sagan. He loved, books like The Secret Life of Plants, he introduced me to. And then he would draw parallels between the scientific literature and the Vedic literature and the yogic literature, and say, see, these ancestors were speaking to plants way before, these books came out thousands and thousands of years ago. And he dated, and, he's very acute. His mind was very, very acute in kind of drawing those parallels between modern science and the yogic culture. So yeah, on many, many, many levels, he was such a great influence and such a blessing in my life.
Quite a few parallels between both of your grandfathers there, especially that one about drawing those parallels between this sort of modern approach to science and the traditional teachings and knowledge. I'm curious because the title of this series is Decolonizing Dialogues. So I want to just hear from each of you. You first, Chief Reuben. What does that term mean to you? What does the term decolonizing draw out of you in terms of how we should live our lives?
I think of that often, and I think of that in my healing work, and as doing therapy for people, and I think of it in my environmental work and even business. And what it comes down to me, what I think of most often is, and I alluded to it earlier a little bit, is like I said, Canada's not a culture. To me, it's like your culture's where you're from and what your roots are. And studies show that you could inherit a trauma, but you could inherit the good things too. And I encourage people, like, I have all nationalities come to my sweat lodge, and I knew us First Nation, of course, but I didn't know anything about the quarter Scottish that I am, and I went and I explored it, and I found out about it, the good stories, the bad stories, the songs and the language, and I explored all those things, and it was beautiful. It's a culture art. And I went to Norway recently, and the government it sucks that it's oil rich, but what they do with the money is important. They give everybody a living wage. They take care of people so they're not homeless. They incorporate their values of their culture of not being Norwegian, but being Viking and being a clan into the government, and what they're doing and taking care of people, taking care of the environment the way they do is pretty important. And that's what we do as Tsleil-Waututh. Decolonize ourselves is important, to do the healing first. The healing from 20,000 people in Tsleil-Waututh in the shores of Vancouver, 20,000 wiped out down to 13, and that wasn't long ago. My mom's 62 out of that 13. On 188. We're about 600 now. We're a small nation, almost completely extinct. We're one tribe out of 80 of the Coast Salish people in Washington State and in British Columbia, and so then the colonization, like, is happening all over the world, and we see the wars happening on. It's the same thing. I had guests at my ceremony on the weekend from Peru that are going through what our people went through 100 years ago. And I had, a week before that, I had guests from Guatemala. Both of those nations in those two different countries were standing up against the Vancouver mining companies. And the colonization is similar, where they want the resources. And the resources, because I've been down there, and it's a beautiful jungle, and they can live in a house like we do, but most of them choose to live in their communal longhouse in the jungle. And I was like, God, it must be so great, all the abundance of food and fish, and because we're restoring our inlet. Our salmon count went down was down to 6,000. We brought it up to a point last year. We had 1.3 million salmon in the river at once. We did it first time we did a clam harvest in 55 years because we've been cleaning this dirty inlet that has 707 different chemicals in it. But there, it's happening to them. But it's so pristine there. But I said, how's the fishing? It must be really nice. And they said, no, the mining's ruining the water. I said, what about the wildlife? And I'm lucky. 90% of what I eat is wild salmon, moose, elk, deer. And they said, no, it's the cartels that are coming in with their cocoa plants that are clearing out the lands and taking the trees, and industry taking the trees and mining and all this stuff. And it's changing. But that's colonization. But that's one side of it. The other side of it is the colonizers too, who took 33,000 years to colonize themselves and killed 80,000 women in the process, called them witches. And it's taken themselves away from their mind and their heart. But more importantly, I mentioned it earlier, is taken them away from their own enlightenment. We get enlightenment to be in a room with somebody that we love. That's the truth. You love somebody, you're going to get enlightenment from them.
Mm-hmm.
Dad, your mom, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, wife, that's enlightenment. But ceremony is enlightenment too. And that enlightenment comes from the elements that we use, fire, earth, water, and sky, in those ceremonies, and having a understand it until it grows into a reciprocal relationship to those things that we're using, like water. We have a reciprocal relationship to the water in Tsleil-Waututh, so we take care of it, we nurture it, we protect it against industry, we enhance it, we clean it. 707 foreign chemicals in the water around Vancouver. That's what industry has done to this. That's a study that we've done. And we've been cleaning it, though, to the degree that we did the clam harvest. We've been hand-tying eelgrass all along the water right in front of me. That herring came and spawned on it. That's decolonization. Herring came and spawned that. First time in my lifetime, a gray whale came in there and ate the herring. Sea lions came back first time in my lifetime. That's because we get enlightenment from the water, and I did my whole life. So we protect it, we enhance it, because it gives us the sustenance into our spirit that feeds us, but in nutrients in the food that we ate. So it took care of us, and it's our responsibility to take care of those things that give us enlightenment, and the water did through ceremony. Like we love somebody, we're going to protect them. Being in the room with somebody, we're going to get enlightenment from them, and that's our law. But that's our law, and that's what we're missing. And people are colonized to think it's anything else different. Instead, we're pushing forward with Bill C-15 here in British Columbia. I was hoping to present Bill C-5 that the country of Canada is pushing something forward that they could just rush through fossil fuel industry projects and railroad Indigenous rights and everybody else's rights. And as it is right now, more than any other time, we need to look at those rights and question these projects, because as it is right now, it looks bleak. In less than 25 years, there's going to be no edible fish coming to the ocean at the rate we're going. And the fires happen in Manitoba are coming here. It's not the new norm. It's going to get worse. And we need to do something about and get out of our colonized mind and think of our future generations. And not our future generations. My kids already, my grandfather said something that blew me away, because he said, my kids and grandkids will not experience what I experienced on these waters right here. In 1970, he said that when I was born. I've been saying that. My kids already will not experience what I experienced. Every creek, river, and stream in North Vancouver had salmon and trout, and those days are long gone. We need change and need to decolonize ourselves to love what is around us more than looking at it. We need to have a reciprocal relationship to those things. When you go to church, synagogue, sweat lodge, you're going to get enlightenment. You're supposed to. And if you do, give something back for that enlightenment. Right? Giving yourself back to the individual self of who you are. You know, I teach in my ceremonies, if I'm not surpassing you, I'm failing. If you're not surpassing me, I'm failing. So we need leadership. we breed leadership, and we want people to grow to be better, and we want everybody to decolonize themselves. I had royalty in my wedding. I had royalty, not my wedding, in my sweat lodge. I had government in my sweat lodge, municipal, federal, and provincial. Everybody needs enlightenment to see and to recognize and feel that you're beautiful just the way you are, and connect your beauty to everyone else and have them see it and shine yourself. Be enlightenment for somebody, but be enlightenment for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Be for yourself. I can stop there. I could go on and on.
Yeah. No, thank you. And Maitreyi, what does decolonizing mean to you? I'm sorry you have to follow that up, but what does decolonizing mean to you?
Yeah, no, beautifully said by Chief Reuben George. This word love, which is the opposite of greed and exploitation. So that's what we see as a mindset. And I was just speaking to someone and saying how, it's not based on it's not like the white man who's colonizing. Now Indians are colonizing Indians. I mean, that mindset is there even in the brown makeup, unfortunately. So I think that's what we need to see and bring back these traditional values. Because when I studied, just speaking to my guru, Swami Geetananda, he was in the airport and one of the ladies came and asked him, tell me in one word what yoga means. And he said, yoga means love. And this lady was a big lady and she said, I love love, and gave him the biggest hug. So, in terms of how does love translate, this actionable love. And when it's actionable, that's when we have this portal for enlightenment. And that's what yoga truly is, union, unity, and knowing that we are responsible and be responsive to the earth, to the environment, to ourselves, to everybody around us. And this conscious reciprocity is very, very important. And in India, in fact, it's not even phrased as reciprocity. It is said that we're born with certain debts. So that's why this idea of, oh, I'm so self-made doesn't fly there traditionally. We're born with debts to our ancestors. We're born with debts to our gurus. We're born with debts to our parents for taking care of us. We're born with debts, especially to the land we're born in. And that land is called the Janma Bhumi because it has nourished us. Our debt is to put back and to protect that land. And if we don't do that, then we have no portal or capacity for enlightenment. It's written there, very straight that this is something you're meant to do, So I feel that on an external level, yes, you are given all these thought processes and principles to follow. But also in many insidious ways, I think it infiltrates our psyche. Like even when I was growing up, the colonizer or the industrial mindset had gotten into me where, I was like, oh, I have to study, do this, achieve. So my intrinsic value was taken out to a point where my value was reduced to how much I produce and how much I possess. That is the industrial paradigm that kind of infiltrates everyone, even the Indians is the East Indians I'm speaking of. And even though I was on a yoga path, that was still there in my psyche, which I needed to unravel. I needed to kind of let go of and really reclaim my intrinsic value. So one is the actionable external things that we do. And second is how deeply embedded in our psyche this idea of production and this idea of possession has taken over us. So those are the two things I'll speak to in decolonization. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks to you both. One thing I want to ask is, I think many people likely hold a belief that traditional or ancient ways of living and seeing are outdated or not possible to integrate within the context of our fast-paced modern world. So I just want to get a response from each of you. What are your thoughts on that? Is it possible to integrate this traditional, this ancient human wisdom and knowledge with the modern world in some form? Maybe Maitreyi, I'll pass to you to go first this time.
No, I think it's completely possible. That's the work I've been doing. And that's, been my whole life's work in terms of right from the yogic principles that yoga is not an exercise, it's a way of life. It's, the yama niyama. So if you see the foundations of Ashtanga yoga, Ashtanga is 8 limbs. The foundation of it is seeing yourself in relationship to yourself and in relationship to the world and others. So we have these 5 principles that we work with called yama. Yama is conscious restraint. So as we look at conscious restraint, we're seeing our innate nature, or sometimes the survival instinct to survive at all costs, and say, okay, if I'm looking at the survival instinct with respect to ahimsa or non-violence, then how am I being violent towards another human being? How am I allowing somebody else to be violent towards me? And we draw those boundaries. So that I would say is very important, very, very applicable in modern times. It's not an ancient concept, right? On a personal level, on a political level, on a global level, we need to have healthy boundaries, and therefore it's very applicable in today's time as well. And like that, there are so many other principles and so many other guidelines by which we can lead our lives, and the tools also to come back to, or I would say, embody wholeness, those tools to heal, and also the principles of looking at ourselves from a multi-dimensional perspective, that we're not just the physical body. Unfortunately, I was also conditioned in school to think I'm just the physical body, and we learned about nerves and all of that. But the yogic anatomy is completely different. That we have a physical body, we have an energy body, we have a mind field, we have this Vijnana Maya Kosha, the great wisdom field, we have a bliss field. So my perspective of myself also shifts because of that different paradigm that the yogic system teaches me. So all of that is very, very applicable in today's times. I would say, I can go on and on about all these different yogic principles that, help you stay grounded in your humanness, become a more humane person, but at the same time, also tap into divinity, into expansiveness. So it is relevant today. Absolutely.
Thanks. Your thoughts on that, Chief Rueben?
Absolutely, we do in Tsleil-Waututh. We do in my family. I do personally, and I do teach that in my ceremonies every week. I teach people in ceremony, and Ko Salish laws: truth, family, health, and culture. Then what I was saying is add all those fundamental teachings of any religious and spiritual belief: love, honor, respect, dignity, pride, compassion, understanding, truth, knowledge, wisdom, courage, bravery. Those are the fundamental teachings. And like I said, when I opened up a healing center, it's based on those ideas to create a center based on those principles. And whether it came out of legends and stories, teachings, those are the principles that where we came from, and took psychological models and changed them. And the same within our environmental work Tsleil-Waututh does, whether it's cleaning the inlet or reintroducing elk into our traditional territory that brought back grizzly bears and wolves, sort of completing that ecosystem, to the eelgrass that I was talking about, to the salmon that I was talking about, enhancing what we have. That goes along with our teachings of our Department of Treaty Lands and Resources. But also what we did is, when we chose to fight the Kinder Morgan pipeline, one of the elders said, yeah, we'll fight it, but you got to show them our way. So what I'm saying is our way of culture, way of spirituality, but our way of spirit. And I thought to myself, how could we show them our way of spirit to people who don't even understand that they carry a spirit inside of themselves? That's Richard Kinder of Kinder Morgan. And a $350 billion company we're up against. But we did a 1,200-page assessment explaining our law. We did a spill analysis. We did a clean analysis. We did multiple economic studies. I was talking about the air quality test, but also the water we've been testing for over decades, and how many 707 different foreign chemicals in there. But all that work was based on Tsleil-Waututh Nation law, our law of truth, family, health, and culture. of our perspective, where we come from. We broke it down to science where they could understand within our law. Our first law is the water right in front of me. That's the Burrard Inlet. That's where our first mother comes from. What does a mother do for you? Mother feeds you. Broke it down to science that 80% of our diet came from that water right there. And we broke it down to where the pollution comes from those 700 different chemicals, what industry ruined it, and what part did they take in those 707 different chemicals that are in their water, and how it killed the fish, how the fish couldn't survive, how the clams were polluted, how the crab were polluted. That's our law. And that's what we explained. And I'm glad that we kicked that company out of our land and our water and within our law, and they kicked them out of our country too. And that's protecting our law, our reciprocal relationship. Like I was saying earlier, you're in a room with somebody and you love them, you're going to feel it and you're going to feel enlightened. We're protecting that enlightenment that is natural in the circle of life. You introduce something man-made and destruction comes to it. And that's the same with business. It's the same with business. My uncle and I, before he passed, were working on that. We did all that work for one topic, the pipeline, to stop it. But I said, let's do that for the whole Department of Treaty Lands and Resources, which they're already doing. But we put it into law, and they are doing it. We put it into housing, the housing department, Tsleil-Waututh Nation, social services, education, created a language department, created a cultural, spiritual department. And we did it to all our governance, even in education. You look at it and what they teach, and like, what the hell is a hunter and a gatherer? That's what they teach in social studies still today. They're architects, they're botanists, they're so many different, they're medical. 65% of the world's antibiotics comes from the Americas. The world's population didn't start to grow until they learned the America's farming techniques. All these things that we don't know that aren't taught. But when Kinder Morgan, they wanted to set up shop here in our waters, we showed them that they couldn't. And we said, abide by our law. Section 35 of the Canadian Constitution protects our law, and that's our law. And now I think, it should change around the education system too. And show people the true culture of Canada from the Indigenous people within our traditional territory, which is vast. If you're here, teach our law. Teach our law. And so that's what we work towards. And what it is, it's even how we fixed our salmon. From 6,000 salmon for the whole year, for hundreds of thousands in the river at once. We fixed it, and it was old techniques of our ancestors. We took trees and we filled them strategically to make spawning beds. That's what they did. They fixed the waterfalls, but we also cleaned it. All the garbage that was in there, we cleaned it. Now there's millions of salmon coming back, but that was following our old ways. When I was a kid, there's remnants of orchards here on Tsleil-Waututh. They're really old. You look at an apple tree when it's young, it's shiny and beautiful. This one looked like it had warts all over it because it was so old, but it was still producing apples for 100 years. Is a whole orchard of apples and plums and cherries, and we created that, and we're doing that now again in food sovereignty. We're growing our food again. Of course we learn and do hydroponics and have big storage bins for the winter, but we produce enough vegetables for everybody now. Out of 2 storage bins every Wednesday, anybody could go pick up any vegetables that they want, and that's important. And that's going back to who we are, to having a relationship to the food that we eat. Having a relationship to the food that we eat is important, and it's all connected. And so we incorporate these values into all we're doing. And I do that in my life personally. 90% of what I eat is wild meat. I'm lucky that way. I get my fish. I still get my fish. I do prayer with the fish. One time we went fishing, I wasn't catching anything, and my sister was like, "Hey, did you pray?" And I went, "Oh, geez, no, I've been fishing for 45 minutes. She goes, "You better pray." So we all stopped. We all said a prayer right away. One home with 10 spring salmon. Shared it with our elders, you know. But anyway, yeah, we incorporate those values into all we do. And like I say, I see other countries doing that. I believe Norway's doing that to a certain degree. I believe Scotland's trying to do that. They're coming out of colonization. They are. They have songs, legends, stories, and teachings. I said, build your sweat lodge. And they said, no, we don't want to bastardize your ceremony. I said, no, you won't when you'll do it your way. Tell your own legends and stories and teachings because you had it. And the elders speaking up said, yes, I know where they got the rocks. I know how they built it. Another elder. They're finding their roots. And I think we need more of that, to people to go back to how it used to be, because where we're going right now, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Look at these wars. They just drive me crazy. It's so sad to see destruction happening. And the treatment of our women is a direct reflection how we treat Mother Earth. We need respect. We need to respect. And you know, I do. And another thing that comes around about how to be within our law is I do it with fierce love too. I protect my lands and waters and my people with fierce love. And I continue to do that for everybody. We don't help the salmon and enhance it and raise them, and they go out to the Pacific and say, you can't have that salmon, it's a Tsleil-Waututh salmon. All the actions benefit everybody. Everybody. And I said that to Richard Kinder himself. I said, you're incapable of making choices for your own future generations because you're stuck in your dysfunction of greed. If you're incapable of doing that, I'm going to do that for you because you're a human being and your kids deserve a chance, and so do your grandkids. And we'll always do that with fierce love.
Beautiful.
Yes. I just want to remind our live audience, we're going to get to some of your questions for Chief Reuben and Yogacharini Maitreyi in a few minutes. I have one more question for you guys before we go into the audience questions. It's about ancestors and connecting with our ancestors. And I'm curious from both of your cultures, what is the outlook on connecting with those ancestors who are no longer with us, and how they can help us with healing and moving forward in these challenging times? Reuben, if you'd like to go first.
Our ceremonies bring us to a higher state of spiritual consciousness. We have what I call a spiritual ecosystem. We have good things that feed it, and we have negative things that feed our spiritual ecosystem. But we try to improve our spiritual ecosystem because our spirit's good. We want our mental, emotional, and physical to match our spirit. And then we within that practice, we do other ceremonies that bring us to a higher state of spiritual consciousness, help us to experience a little bit of heaven. And when we knew, like, and so when my family passed away, it's sad, but they tell me straight out, said, come tell the family to say goodbye to me because I'm going home now. My grandparents are there to take me home, and I'm not afraid anymore. So better go get my kids and everyone tell me to say goodbye to me. All my family passed away like that, and we just don't die and that's it. Something happens. We go somewhere. Even our actions have a spirit. You come together and you love somebody. That love is a spirit. The grass I was talking about earlier is a spirit, and it has a past, present, and a future. That spirit, everything does, and we utilize those things in ceremony to access that, to help us to grow, to eventually have a higher state of spiritual consciousness. But we also use our ancestors to enhance that, to help that. What I believe is, in most ceremonies, we call our ancestors to take our messages of our prayer, maybe for somebody to heal. We pray for them to heal. They might be in trouble or hurt or pain, going through sickness. We ask our ancestors to help them heal. That's what we do. And there's, in the higher state of spiritual consciousness, we have a direct line of communication to Creator, but it's our ancestors that help with that. And they can help with that, and I believe that. I believe that in my ceremonies, what I experience, that there is something good. There is. We just don't die and that's it. And I help people too. They'll be really sick and somebody call me and say, oh, my parents are passing away. Can you help? And I tell them what they're going to experience. And I said, you don't have to be worried, don't have to be afraid. And they do. They experience that. And, when they're getting close and they're almost dying, going back and forth between this physical world and that spiritual realm. And so something happens, and it's a good thing. And what we do to pray is to have that enlightenment to experience some of that. If we pray long enough and hard enough, that if we're really, really lucky, you'll experience a little bit of the heaven stuff beyond the enlightenment that we all experience from something like love. Beyond that, and that's experiencing where our ancestors are when they pass away. So we never ever in my culture forget our ancestors. We always pray to them and always give thanks. Asking for something is really important in prayer, but it's just as important to give thanks. I'll be quick and that's it. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Maitreyi?
Yeah, I would second that. In the Indian culture, the ancestors, there's so many ceremonies, and there's a 16-day period where you actually, it's called Pitru Paksha, where you have a lot of ceremonies invoking the ancestors, saying prayers, using them as a portal to divinity, and also healing ancestral trauma as well, to look into our own DNA makeup, seeing our physical makeup, seeing our emotional makeup, and clearing and cleansing and purification of self for the purpose of healing this generational trauma. So that is also part of the process. And I would say that that is so, ingrained in the culture. It's so, steeped. And I've had many instances. For me, there's no doubt, because one of my aunts was going through a rough phase, and my grandfather came in her dream and said, go contact Maitreyi. And there's so many instances. I can give so many examples where without a doubt, I can say there is positive intervention from the other world for the purpose of healing and enlightenment from the ancestral lineage. More so from people who I've been close to, like my grandfather. But I've had my aunts speak of other members they were close to also come and support them. So yeah, there's no doubt in my mind on a personal level, and also on a practical and teaching level. It's ingrained in the yogic culture. Yeah.
Thank you. We've got some nice questions here from our audience, so I'll maybe bring one of those up first. And this is actually right in line with what we're speaking about. So Priyanka has asked, what do your ancestors expect of you today? I don't know if that's an easy one to answer or not, but if either of you feels inspired to take a shot at that first, then please do.
I can if...
Please, Reuben.
Well, here's the thing. In the higher state of spiritual consciousness and enlightenment, it's beauty, it's goodness, it's beyond goodness. It's so right, but that's where they're from. And if you're in that place and you're looking down on earth and looking at the existence that we live in, I think what they'd want is us to grow more, to experience what they experience, to experience where they're at. And that's where that enlightenment comes from. That's from the higher state of spiritual consciousness comes from. But I think, there's no time in the spiritual realm like there is here. There's no time. It's a blink of an eye, and it might be 100 years on earth, but it's a blink of an eye in the spiritual realm, and we're together. We're together. So I think it's a hard thing to answer when they're in the enlightenment and we're going to be there. When they're in that heavenly place and we're going to be there. I think, it's tests that we're going through. I think our spirit's always good. I do. I think our spirit's good. And I think it's stuck in our existence of whatever life that we have. But since that spirit's good, I think maybe what they would want is us to match that goodness of our spirit, to help us to grow mentally, emotionally, and physically, and spiritually, even to grow, to match that goodness of what our spirit is, to guide us, and that in turn will guide us to that enlightenment. And that's it. But you know what, too? I just want to say this. I'm not a good example about how to be. I'm a goofball. I have good things to say, but what I do is I teach people to surpass me, and there are good examples. My brother, holy smokes, we went to Europe together for 10 days, and he didn't get mad or nothing. He's just happy the whole time. And I phoned his wife, and I said, he's happy all the time. He is. He 30 years of marriage, never yelled at me, never swear at me. I said, that's how I want to be. That's what I look for. I look for those things in my life. And so I'm just saying, I might say good things, but I'm a wacky goofball. So don't just remember they're good words. But if you see me being wacky, say, okay, yeah, it is
Oh, that's great.
Maitreyi, any comments on what you think our ancestors or your ancestors expect of you today?
I would say to be more integrated in, and the yogic ethos is anandam, is to tap into or align with anandam, which is bliss. And how we do it is on a step-by-step level. We become self-aware, apply karuna sakshi bhava, which is compassionate self-witnessing, and say, where can I move from suffering to savoring? So even in the smallest of things, maybe I'm rushing to cook something, maybe I'm rushing to get somewhere. Can I start 10 minutes earlier and actually savor the process? And the same with my body. Can I savor the movement? For example, if you're doing a yoga practice, can we pace ourselves to a point where we're not suffering the practice, but savoring the practice, and then take that from the mat into everything that we do on a day-to-day level. And when it translates like that, then the bliss becomes more accessible. It's not this, concept in the air. So there are step-by-step ways for integration, for tapping into the bliss body. And I would say that's what my ancestors have asked me to strive for. Yeah.
Thank you. There's a question here from Tarek that says, when you speak of reciprocity, I think Chief Ruben, you were speaking about reciprocity early in the conversation. When you speak of reciprocity, what is a moment you felt truly received by the land?
It was my first sweat lodge. I was 23. Know nothing about praying. I had teachings. I went into the lodge, and I had a hard life and all this stuff, and I went into the lodge, and they said, it's hot like a sauna and it's dark, and they said, it's your turn to pray. I said, okay, what do I do? They said, introduce yourself to your ancestors. Say, my name is Reuben George, and I come to pray in a good way. And I said, okay, I could say that. I did that, and I said, what do I do now? Go you pray. And I said, how? Ask for good things. And I said, okay, I could do that. And I opened my mouth, and I just started crying. It felt like the first time in years, since I was 11 years old, I cried. My grandpa died, and I said, I'm not going to cry anymore. And I cried, and I cried, and I felt the warmth of the sweat. I felt the warmth of those elders that were taking care of me. I felt the love of them. I felt the love of the hot rocks and the steam. It was so overwhelming with emotion that I had all these brutal issues in my life that it just poured out of me like a dam that was holding it all, and it was just released in a moment. And I was just like, wow, that was a relationship I started at the Sweat Lodge, and it helped me so much that I continue to give back. And since that, 33 years ago, I've been going to a Sweat Lodge ceremony every week since. Sometimes 2-3 times a week, and now I give back the way they helped me, because I still feel and love those things that gave me the healing that I needed to love myself.
That's a very, very beautiful story.
Thank you.
Maitreyi, do you have any comments on reciprocity or a moment when you felt received by the land or others?
Yeah, this was when I was younger. But before I go to that, I also wanted to speak to the sweats. So we have the Janma Bhumi, the land we are born into and raised in, and then we have the Karma Bhumi, the land we move to make a living or, to thrive. And 20 years ago, I got my residency here. So the first thing, thanks to my teachings and the ancestors, the first thing I did was connect with the First Nations people and go for sweats. So I went for a series of 12 sweats. And there too, I found a very, very profound connection to the land. And there was such an emotional release. But before that, when I was younger, my grandfather would send me to speak to the plants. And in the beginning, of course, it was just lip service. It's like, oh, this crazy grandfather making me talk to all the plants. But before I knew it, I just felt one with the plants, probably because I was younger, I was open. I would just feel myself connect to each of the neem tree or the, herbal plants my grandmother was growing. I've just had such oneness experiences just with the plants. So, and I felt deeply received by not just the plant, but the earth, the roots, one with all of it. And for that, I have my grandfather to thank. Yes.
I think we have time for one more question. And this is a good one, I think, from Chloe, who says, what's the most misunderstood part of your path by outsiders? And maybe Maitreyi, I'll let you go first, because I think there's a lot to say about misappropriation of yoga and tantra probably.
Yeah. Like, where do I even start, right? Like yoga, at least it's reduced to some physical exercise, whereas tantra, it's just been hijacked by a whole bunch of teenagers in heat, because it's like hypersexualized. When I came to the West, I was like, oh, I even stopped using the word tantra because there were so many misconceptions around it. And thanks to Bollywood, not that India is free from misconceptions, because of the movies in India, the Bollywood, you'll usually find tantra being portrayed as black magic. So typically a tantric would be shown wearing black with skulls and throwing incantations and, sending, some spells onto somebody and killing a goat, and which was crazy stuff. So either if you grew up in India with Bollywood movies, you think it's black magic, or you come to the West, you think tantra is some hypersexual activity. Whereas tan actually comes from the root word tangible, tan, body. So everything the body does is spiritualized, including the sexual union. So that is one aspect of it. So what you eat, how you defecate. So, people are discussing in detail, all what is coming out of them, what's going into them. So, and tra is any tool to hone and transcend the limitations of the body, just as man is mind, and tra is a tool to hone and transcend the limitations of the mind. So mantra and tantra. Tan is body. So we're working with the tangible in tantra. And like I said, there are so many misconceptions, but yeah, these are the two major misconceptions, I would say. And I'd leave it at that. Yeah.
Well, there's so many. And it just blows my mind away sometimes. It's anybody can pour hot water on rocks, for example. That's one ceremony. And I tell you too, there's First Nations meaning like, or the first ones here from the beginning of time, and we're many, many different nations. Like almost every culture in North America had their own sweat lodge, their own way of doing it, and there's not one handbook that says it. And people come and they say, oh yeah, I've been and we do it this way. And I said, well, okay, that's nice, but we do it this way. And it's important, because when I go to ceremony, and like I said, I pray all over the world, I go with respect, common sense respect. I'm not going to go to a synagogue or a church and pull out my pipe and smudge and start smudging everybody. I'm not going to do that. People think that it's all the same, so they think they could do things like that. And I said, hey, slow down here. I said, I'm going to show you some things. And I think but there's many many things that are wacky around that, and I learned to be really patient. Sometimes I'm not.
Facing it, yeah.
We're just coming to our time. I'm so grateful to you, Chief Reuben, and to you, Maitreyi, for taking the time. And this is becoming a really wonderful annual event. Before we go, Chief Reuben, any closing thoughts that you want to share? Any events or projects that you'd like people to know about that you're working on? Just open floor to share any closing thoughts.
Well, first off, I'd like to say, Maitreyi, thank you. I think I know it was set up this way to ask questions, but I would really enjoy just a conversation like this and invite people to come and listen. I think I enjoyed the teachings. We're saying the same things in our own way, and I love that. I love that, and that's what my grandfather says when I started in the beginning. If you're Catholic, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, doesn't matter what you are. If you're good at it, we could have prayers with each other. I still do environmental work. I still do things around the pipeline and protecting the water here. I'm very involved in land, water, human rights. I try not to travel as much internationally, but I do find myself in situations like with the people from Peru and Guatemala. And very active. And I worked really hard last 14 years stopping fossil fuels in our territory, and it feels good to work for something. I think hydrogen is pretty important. We take water and separate oxygen and hydrogen, and then we create an engine. And when you put those two things back together, that's where the power comes from. And when that power comes, that turns back into water. So there's zero pollution. It's a no-brainer thing to do. Mm-hmm. It would be really nice to see hydrogen companies get the subsidies that fossil fuel companies get, which is billions and billions of dollars. And I think we need a shift, because right now the fires are going to get worse. Everything's going to get worse, and we have to start thinking of our future generations, and we have to be a lead in that, and we can be. This pipeline was $34 billion over budget. We could have created. We're doing one hydrogen plant that's going to have a fleet of cars, and it's going to have 5 fill-in stations, fleet of trucks, I should say. We could have built 188 of those across Canada and being a leader in green energy and be well on our way to saving our environment and saving our forests and saving a whole bunch of things. And that's what I'm still working towards. And I still want to create a difference by doing something like that, working to protect our environment, but also doing something to enhance it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Maitreyi, any closing thoughts? Any events, programs you want people to know about?
I think we have an event through Banyen Books this Sunday, where we're hearing the conversation of the trauma of colonization. We'll be continuing and practices to support that. So it would be a bit more practical this Sunday. I'd be speaking less and guiding people through more breath work and meditation. So that's happening. And then end of the month, I'm speaking at a festival where one of the ladies, Tasmia, is supporting an Indigenous shaman to buy back land in South America. So I'm part of that and supporting that. And then our teacher training is coming, where it's a 2-year program where we are, I would say, helping people understand the connectedness in yoga. So that's why it's not called a yoga program, but a self-awareness program, just to, give it a little bit of a shift. And it's a 2-year program. I feel a minimum of 2 years is necessary for that integration, even though it's only on the weekends. So that is also happening. And those who want to be in touch, they can always drop in for our community classes. It's called a satsang, or a community class, every Saturday. So these are the things I'm involved with. And also I'm working on a documentary called The Totem. So that's in my space now. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. And people can go to arkaya.net to learn about all of your programs, and SalisheElements.ca is Chief Reuben's hydrogen company. and also twnSacredTrust.ca to learn more about the environmental work that he's doing. Huge thank you to both of you. It's been a real honor and pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. What you got?
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Arkaya Radio with Yogacharini Maitreyi and friends. Don't forget to join us live online from anywhere in the world for the Arkaya Community Satsang every Saturday at 9 a.m. Pacific. Connect with us and learn more about our on-demand courses and the live online Embodied Expansion certification. Visit arkaya.net or find Arkaya Foundation on Instagram and Facebook.